Hi, and welcome to another show with Sage Holistic Health and Wellness Center. My name is Celis. I am your host, and I'm excited to be with you again today. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, I have Hanna Stensby with me. She's been on our show before, and we're pleased to have her back to talk all about her parenting approach that she works with clients with, called Positive Discipline. Have a listen.
Sage is a 501c3 nonprofit organization building community by providing education and counseling about physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. We encourage all of our listeners to find their own path to what holistic wellness means to you. Hi, and welcome to another show with Sage Holistic Health and Wellness Center. We are so excited to have you on again, Hanna. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So today we are going to be covering it's almost controversial, right? Parenting.
It is, yeah.
That's what we're here to talk about because there's so many different approaches to parenting. And this is one of the areas that Hanna really specializes in with regard to the therapy work that she does. And we're just here today to talk a little bit about that and let you share your knowledge and your expertise.
Thank you. Yeah. So just kind of a little bit about how I got into working with parents.
Yeah,
that was a good place to start, maybe. So throughout my career, I've worked with a lot of children and families, and with that comes working with the parents. And just essentially in my time with them, I really realized that working with the parents is really the most impactful way to work with the family because the parents are you're with the children all the time, and you have the greatest impact on them because you have that connection. So while it is really valuable to have therapy with children, and there's definitely a place for that, I just really was drawn to working with parents and helping them feel like they have some tools, because a lot of the comments that I would hear is, they didn't come with a manual, and it's true. I think that there's a huge need for a little bit more information because it is really daunting sometimes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing you say is that, although you've done a lot of work with children, where you really found your love and your passion is working with the parents, because they're the ones that really hold the keys for change, or for kind of like how to drive that automobile, rather than just a child who's a passenger and they don't have as much control. So it's really kind of like preventative in a sense for creating a systemic approach to working with a family, and you're kind of spearheading it by focusing on working with the parents.
Yeah, definitely. I if you kind of look at like a macro level, it's how you create the most change, and parents are agents of change. And so if you can help empower them to kind of create that preventative approach, then there'll be hopefully ideally less children needing therapy, and it'll just create a larger movement. So
great. Yeah. And so in your work with parents, then I'm sure you worked with a lot of different parents. I mean, are there just maybe a lot of different kinds of issues that parents will bring to you, or where do you kind of start that process, or where does it begin with that phone call to you?
Yeah, so I mean, it can go a lot of different ways, but I think even in just the initial phone call, it's just a lot of, I'm struggling with my child, I'm not really understanding what's going on, but I know that they need some extra support, and or maybe what I've been doing hasn't been working, and kind of just needing that extra support. And whether that's, I'm moving into a situation where I'm separating or I'm divorced, and I want to figure out how to do co-parenting with my partner, because we know it's really important, but we're not really sure how to go about that.
Yeah.
Or, a newer parent realizing like, hey, this is really important, and I want to get some more resources for that.
Yeah.
Or even parents, I'm not agreeing with my partner on how this should be done. We're kind of coming to a head, and now we want to know like what would be the best way.
Sure. So those are some of the issues then that you see parents calling in for. But usually it sounds like people, by the time they're calling to get some help in a counseling setting, they're kind of frustrated. There's kind of some behaviors going on that are not that fun, or just kind of pulling hair out. I mean, I'm sure there's parents that come to you kind of preemptively and say, hey, we are not having any problems, but we could see how this could get hard really quick.
Yes.
So, but it sounds like there's a lot of different ways that people come to you.
Definitely. And I think it's just also acknowledging that parenting is extremely challenging, and it's also a really beautiful experience, but it's not easy, and it's not something that you should just naturally be born ready in. able to do, without any support. And I think sometimes it feels like that, the way it's portrayed today.
I mean, I can certainly speak to that, being that I've got 2 boys myself and one on the way. And it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. And so to have, a parenting coach or parenting therapist to work with, I mean, it's so helpful to have that guide and that just outside perspective. So I think, I'm sure you'll want to speak to this too. I mean, there's just a lot that comes from our past about how we were parented, and not that any of that is wrong or bad. I mean, I know every parent does the best that they can, but there can sometimes be some things left over from that can cause a problem.
Yeah, and that you may not even be realizing is impacting you in the present moment. But definitely. That's one of the big things that we'll focus on, is kind of understanding what your values are and what your ideas and your beliefs are, and kind of where did that come from, and is that something that you want to hold on to, or is that something that you want to change? And kind of, so getting that greater awareness about you and where you're coming from and where you want to go specifically is a major way that I operate.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So today, I know there's a certain kind of parenting approach that you've gotten a lot of extra training in, and that maybe you'd want to talk a little bit about that. Maybe you can share the name of it and kind of what your expertise is in, or your training.
Yeah. So I'm certified as a positive discipline parent educator. And so essentially what the kind of some background information about that, Dr. Jane Nelson founded that, and it's been around for years. And she really focuses on, she's worked a lot with children and families, and just really focused on the work of Adler, who is, if you kind of go back in your psychology classes 101, he has a whole therapy model and approach. So it's kind of drawn upon that.
Do you want to talk about his approach a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So
for those that don't know.
Yeah, he deals a lot with kind of how we are in relationship to society, and like our social, how things are, how our interactions are impacting us, and what we're learning from those interactions, essentially. So it's a lot about, basically the idea is that, when you have this misbehavior, it's really not a misbehavior. It's more of, we're trying to get a need met, and maybe in an inappropriate way. And so it's kind of the idea of a discouraged child is a child that's going to be misbehaving. An encouraged child is a child that's going to be having more positive, encouraging behaviors. And it also has to do with understanding what your own kind of top card is the phrase that is used. So kind of knowing where you're coming from and where maybe your spots of sensitivity or way of relating to the world and how that impacts you, and then your interactions with the child.
So this top card idea, that's new to me. I haven't heard it, so I love hearing about this.
Sure.
That it sounds like that might change or shift for a parent, like whatever top card is coming up for them.
Yeah, in a way. It's essentially, there's kind of 4 main top cards, and it impacts how you're going to be responding to situations. And so it's helpful to know, like, oh, if my top card is superiority, I'm coming off like I need to be right about this, or I may be coming off a little controlling or like power hungry. Really, it's just because I'm really scared of being wrong and having no meaning in the situation, or having nothing to bring. So I'm maybe kind of overcompensating.
That makes a lot of sense.
Or noting that, like, your strengths are that you're a really great leader and you can really take charge and you can offer a lot. So it's kind of like going into the parenting situation knowing what you're bringing.
Yeah, and then that, like we were talking about too, it can be different. Like maybe one day I might kind of be more in that superior place, kind of really feeling that underneath, really feeling kind of insecure, or feeling like I don't know what the heck I'm doing today. But other days I might have a different top card.
Yeah.
So thanks for explaining that. But yeah, I mean, there are so many different parenting approaches out there, though. This is the thing that probably is really hard. I know for me as a parent, and when I was a new parent, just trying to read so many different books and kind of pull all this information in. So maybe you can speak a little more about that, because that's kind of a hard thing for a parent to look at and choose. Yeah,
I think it's definitely daunting today, especially there is this kind of pressure on being a really good parent and using all the tools that are available. And there's so much out there. There's so many blogs. There's so much, and it can be overwhelming, like what is right for me. And I think a lot of that too is like how I explained in the beginning, like finding your parenting vision of what you want it to be. But what I like about kind of operating from this kind of guiding principle of the positive discipline that I bring in is that you're always looking to encourage the child, and you're always looking to find kind of the meaning behind the behavior, and you're not just reacting to the behavior. So it helps you kind of cut through and create this very respectful relationship with your child that empowers them. And it's by no means is it permissive. It's definitely, you're creating basically that intrinsic motivation to behave in a positive way. And rather than having it be more like fear and control, where punishment comes in, and that can kind of be the motivating force of, I'm not going to do this behavior because I don't want to get in trouble, or I'm going to get things I like taken away. They're not really changing their behavior because they want to, or they're learning these morals and values. It's really more extrinsically motivated.
Yeah.
So that's what I like about this.
So this approach does not do punishment or consequences.
Right.
Is that
they do incorporate logical consequences.
Or like natural consequences.
Yeah. So, but they very much cautioning against using them too much, because a lot of the times it's really easy to get sucked into punishment disguised as a logical consequence. You spilled milk, now you have to clean the entire floor. Whereas maybe that might make sense, like literally. It's probably more about oh wow, let's use some questioning to help the child understand and think critically about what just happened, so they come up with the solution. So it would be, oh wow, oops, the milk spilled. What happened there? And then you give the opportunity to the child to be like, oh well, I was holding 5 things and then the milk spilled. And you're like, how did that work out for you? And they're like, well, not very well. And what do you think might be some things that you could do differently next time? Well, I think maybe I'm going to try just first carrying the milk and then my other stuff.
I see.
So you're guiding the child to come up with it themselves, and you'd be surprised how young of a child can actually do that. Like, it seems like it may be just for older kids, and obviously under 4 is kind of a different story, but there's definitely more limit setting, obviously, with that. But
that sounds like a very different approach than kind of just jumping in and saying, hey, you need to not carry so much to the table so that you won't spill. Like, you spilled again.
Right. And it's so easy because we're all busy and we know we could just do it faster, or we know the answer because we've had a chance to go through our lives and have many times of spilling things. And no, you can't carry that much. But that kind of robs the child of the opportunity to learn it for themselves.
Yeah.
And then they're going to keep doing that until they learn it. Right. So it takes a little bit, to allow that to happen.
Sure.
But then in the long term, it pays off. And that's one of the things about that they talk about. Punishment, yes, is effective in the short term, but long term, this is more effective.
Right. I mean, in that scenario or example that you gave, I mean, I could imagine, a situation, which this has happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to a lot of other parents out there. Like you said, we're busy, we have things to do. Something like that happens, and it's like, and it's probably the 10th time something's gone wrong that morning. So that when our reaction or our response can actually cause a lot of anxiety in a child, not that that's what we're intending to do, but that anxiety that could come up for the child could really cause a problem for the logical process that could happen. So what I'm hearing you saying is really slowing that down so that you're giving the child the opportunity to learn. And then, in that learning process, eventually it will become quicker for them so that, and it does eventually happen. The little ones grow up and they do, spill a lot less frequently. But there is a huge process of slowing that process down to be able to really help them.
Right.
That's neat.
And also what I love about this is they talk a lot about, once your child gets to adolescence, like you can, of course, come in and start using this and it can create a lot of change. But if you've been using this approach throughout parenthood and then your child's older, it's way less likely that they're going to be feeling, because the main thing is you're fostering a lot of belonging. And so that's
It's okay. Edit it out. Don't worry.
You're fostering a sense of belonging.
Okay,
so you're fostering a sense of belonging, which is really important, and having that connection. And when you have that within your family, you're going to be less likely to, move into maybe some unsafe behaviors in adolescence of finding that belonging in drugs or alcohol or unsafe things with peers, because that's already a time where social pressures are high, and also our brains are wired to value those more. But so if you look at it from, we're encouraging the children, we're increasing the respect, the mutual respect, by modeling it and providing that environment, and then also creating that belonging. So
that's a great point. I've just been thinking for parents maybe that haven't had the opportunity to learn about this approach, how would this be effective for an adolescent who's already in that rebellious stage, or kind of that place where they're already, coming against them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would just be a little more challenging and take a little bit longer, because oftentimes kids will, I mean, they're smart. They're going to not really trust if all of a sudden you've always kind of had this certain typical response and then it's different. They're going to be a little bit like, what, and not really receive it. But if you just consistently continue to use it, it will work. And the other thing is this, you're pretty transparent as a parent in this situation. So it does involve owning your mistakes. And if you do, we all do it, have a moment where you yell or you say something or you shame them a little bit, and then you go back and say, you know what, wow, like I realized I'm asking you to control your behavior and I wasn't controlling my behavior, and I'm really sorry about that. And what can we do to talk about a solution for the future? And this is what I'm willing to do. What are you willing to do? And just in having that conversation is huge.
To model that. To repair that relationship kind of breakage that happened.
Yeah, and kids are very forgiving. Like, you'd be surprised. Just showing that they're pretty much usually willing to say, you know what, it's fine.
Yeah, they do. Kids love their parents.
Yeah.
But how would you say that this parenting approach is different than from like the way parenting used to be, like a generation ago or 2 generations ago? What would you say about that?
Yeah. I think there's definitely kind of that internal struggle I know within myself when I was looking at different ways of, well, this is what my parents kind of said worked, and this has been the foundation of, even you see in schools where it's very much, children need to be quiet, they need to sit down, they need to speak when spoken to. We don't want to have like this totally permissive free reign. And how do you balance the two? And I think the thing that we have today is their lifestyles are so different, right? So in the past, I mean, your child might even be like back in the 50s, they may be working with you and actually doing tasks outside where there's a lot of responsibility and it's like to benefit the whole family. And there's a little bit less of that today, just with safety things, and it's just not the way that our culture has gone. So there is a lot more opportunities for a child to learn that they belonged and that they had significance in like a literal concrete form of like a family job. Or just other things. That's kind of one example, but there was more of that mindset, and there was kind of more modeling of following authority, just in the way that our culture was
back then.
Right. And so the children had a model for that, and they kind of were on board with the parents are at the top and you're at the bottom, and we kind of just need to fall in line. Not to say there's anything wrong with it, but there's just a lot of shift in the way that our culture has changed. So there's not really those two models for it. So the idea with this is that you're still encouraging them, you're empowering them to have that critical thinking, that sense of belonging and respect, but you're modeling it in a respectful way with them without having to get into a power struggle.
So kind of more working alongside them. Not that there's not a hierarchy. I mean, the parents are still the ones in charge, but that you're more willing to kind of like step into their shoes more.
Right. Yeah, because I think what people will say, well, like, how can you say there's no hierarchy, or, that's crazy. These children, are obviously, adults know much more, and
like who's leading,
right?
Who's leading the family.
And I think if you look at it as like the definition, of a human, like we all deserve love and belonging, we all deserve respect, whether you're a child, whether you're an infant, whether you're someone with, who's disabled. Like we're not debating that you deserve respect, right? And encouragement. And so that's kind of what it comes back to, is that, you can still lead and you can still make decisions, but you can do it in a respectful way. So it's this idea of being kind but firm. And also the idea of winning, instead of winning over your child, you're winning your child over, right? So you're gaining that connection and that trust and understanding versus overpowering them And
Okay.
does that make sense?
So, like, winning over your child just meaning you're not trying to bribe them? Is that what you're meaning?
You're not trying to bribe them, or you're not engaging in a power struggle where you're saying, I'm the parent, you're the child, and because I said so, this is happening.
Yeah.
And then there's so many ways that can go wrong.
Yeah.
Or you're not it's kind of like defeating their sense of self, right? Because oftentimes kids will that invites rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
So then they're always kind of in this cycle of just rebelling, and they're going to hurt themselves in the long run, oftentimes. Or they sacrifice their sense of self and they get into this super pleasing mode where they feel that, in order to matter in the world, I have to be doing things that get adult approval.
True. That makes sense.
So it's how do you balance that out and still have them be really respectful and kind and learn values, but it's
that does sound like a hard balance. And I know you mentioned earlier something about that this is not permissive parenting. And I know there's a lot of talk about that, these days where there's kind of this idea that kids just kind of do whatever they want and they don't have to listen to adults. And like kind of the pendulum has swung the other way from this other approach of where kids are not, only seen and not heard and do as they're told. So I guess that's that fine line of like, how do you say that this is not permissive parenting, but it's called positive discipline? And so just kind of wondering a little bit more about that, how you would explain that.
That's a good question. So one of the big tenets as well is that, coddling or rescuing is not helpful for children to develop a sense of self or for learning, really. So because that can create this kind of mistaken belief that, well, I'm only important when I'm receiving special service, right? So then that can kind of get into, or almost like a learned helplessness in a way of, I'm not able to do it, I can't do it. And so they would also say, allow your child to struggle and just kind of give them some encouragement while they're struggling. So that would look like, maybe a child who is struggling with tying their shoes, or maybe they, tried and it's not really the way they wanted. They're getting frustrated and they come to you and they just want you to do it. But it's something you guys have been working on for a while. They've been able to do it. So they do have the training. And you kind of say, you know what? Gosh, I can see you're really frustrated, but I really believe that you're going to be able to find a solution to this.
Okay.
Or something like that.
So kind of letting them know that you believe in them and allowing them to struggle a little bit more, which I think for parents can be uncomfortable to like want to see your child struggle or crying when if I just did this, it would just be so much easier. Or for anything, like if I just make their bed for them, then I don't have to have that fight with them where they're going to like yell at me and be whining and crying. So there's just I guess bringing it back to that patience and just allowing things to slow down enough to give your child the opportunity to learn.
Right.
And that takes time to slow things down.
A lot of time. Yeah, because most of the time we all know how to do it, 20 times faster than they would do it, like with the tying the shoe or whatever the task is. But.
Yeah. Well, and I see how this is really kind of it's more of a community. It's like that relational, the Adlerian kind of perspective or flavor where you're socially, this is how you're interacting or relating with your environment, with your entire family, and then also with the world around you. I think that in our culture now, there's a lot of like individualism where we're all just like, it's just easier if I do it myself, right? If I just can not have to depend on all these other people to do things, I can get it done in my way. But there's just so much more depth and connection and community when we all learn how to depend on others. And I hear that this just starts at such a young age where you can teach that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the kind of the idea is that you'd be cultivating, this child that then has this ability to, work with other people and has a strong sense of self and is just a peaceful way of being.
I mean, I hear so many parents say, my goal is to have my child be a good citizen.
Right. Yes.
In the community, just to grow up and to be able to live this life of being able to give back and be part of something bigger. And so it sounds like that would really reach to, one of the tenets that, or the main philosophy really of positive discipline.
And it makes sense too, because if we think, okay, I want my child to be this active member of society and contributing, they have to believe that they have something to contribute. Right. And so how else would they learn that other than, as they're growing up, having opportunities to understand that and cultivate that. And if we're doing everything for them, then how would they know? Yeah. It must be, if you don't think that I can do this, then I probably can't.
comes from the parents,
Mm-hmm.
that sense of self, that self-worth,
Mm-hmm.
that self-esteem. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that can be developed at such an early age in
Yeah.
a child too, like developmentally speaking, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also something that we get to come back to.
Yes.
And
yes.
we can always work on
yes,
that
you
with
can
our
always,
children.
yeah. And I think that's one thing too that I think sometimes all the parenting focus can have this flavor of like, you have to do it right from the beginning or else everything is ruined, right? And that's not true at all, of course. And, you know, it's great to have these foundational skills or frameworks to work from in the beginning, but we're all resilient.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if there's one thing that listening parents could take away from today, from this, little episode here, what do you think would be the main thing you'd want to have them take away?
I would say just the importance of validating and connecting with whatever emotion the child is having before redirecting is really important, because you're not going to get that them to listen really or receive what you're saying if you're not able to connect first. And then also beyond that, it just builds that sense of belonging and validation for them too. So I think that's one thing, along with the kind but firm. Yeah.
That's so great. Thank you so much for sharing this today. And if anyone out there as a parent is looking for some support, for some guidance, I hope that you would reach out and give Hannah a call. You want to say your phone number and a way that people can contact you?
Yeah, and you can give me a call, 714-757-0789, and I'd be happy to talk to you about options that I provide. And yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge with us all today. All right.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you for spending some of your time today with us at Sage Holistic Health and Wellness Center. If you like what we're all about, please consider supporting our nonprofit organization by making a tax-deductible donation. To do this, you can go to our website at www.sagewellnessctr.org and click on Donate in the upper right-hand corner. We look forward to spending some time again with you real soon. Take good care.